Johnny.
Okay. Thank you, Ellen. Good morning, everybody. How are you? I have red eyes this morning, not because I was out late last night. 10, 15 years ago, I would have spent my Halloween evenings in a pub somewhere in Dublin until 3 or 4 in the morning. Last night, I spent my evening walking 3 little boys around our neighborhood trick-or-treating and trying to get them to bed with sweets and sugar in their bellies. I got up this morning in Dublin, flew in to Amsterdam, and my wife sent me a photograph of our 2 youngest boys who are nearly 4. And this morning, she found them outside their bedroom with all of their sweets all over the floor, having their breakfast. So a belated happy Halloween to you all. So I want to share with you for the next 25 minutes some insights on digital recruiting in 2018. For those of you who I haven't met before, I don't know, my name's Johnny. I run a company called Social Talent. We accidentally became the largest online platform for teaching recruiters around the world. We trained about 60 or 70,000 people on recruiting, and we're used by a ton of enterprises to scale learning across their businesses and upskill their teams, whether it's managers, experienced recruiters, or new people. So that's a little bit about what we do today. My roots, though, in terms of the business that we have today, started about 10 years ago. So 10 years ago, 2008, I was a recruiter moving home from the Caribbean to set up a recruitment agency. Not yet quite a trainer. I became a trainer about 1 or 2 years later, as Ellen indicated. But back in 2008, first of all, I ask, who here was working in recruiting back in 2008? Okay, so maybe 30% of the audience, right? Who here had left college or school in 2008? Who here was still in school, still in college in 2008? Okay, there's some interesting facts about our demographics. So cast your memory back 10 years. 2008 was the year of Sex on Fire by Kings of Leon. That was the biggest song I remember from September, October 2008 on all the radio stations as Kings of Leon broke through. Big movie that year was Iron Man. So the first Marvel movie came out in 2008, and there's about 100 Marvel movies a year, it would seem. So big year for that. It was also this year, unfortunately, that the recession kicked off, the markets collapsed, the world collapsed, the economy went into turmoil. It was the year I set up a business and had our first child, which is obviously a difficult thing to do, all combined. Actually, that was the same month. We set up a business, Bear Stearns collapsed, the world went into recession, and I had a baby. Or my wife had a baby. That will be an interesting year. Also a year where I started blogging. This is one of my blogs from around that time. As a recruiter, I was running a recruitment agency, trying to find people and learning about these things that people were calling social recruiting and using social media. I was only on Facebook a year, I think, in 2008. I think it was 07 or 06 when they opened it up beyond the universities in the US, when people like us who weren't in the US at college could actually join. And I was dabbling with Twitter. I just kind of really logged back into my LinkedIn account to see could I start using it for recruiting. So it was a different time, and the world of social recruiting back in 2008 was dominated by these types of sites. And you remember Bebo, MySpace, High Five? Yeah, we were all trying to figure out back in 2008, how do we recruit using these different tools? A very, very different world. So back then, you didn't make many hires using social media. Social media was something you were dabbling with. You were trying to figure out, do I advertise my jobs there? Do I source candidates? Very few people were sourcing candidates from social media in 2008. Largely, people went online and said, we exist. Yay! And that was your strategy for using social media for recruiting. For a lot of recruiters, that's still their strategy. Just go online and say, hey, we exist, and hope it works. Doesn't work terribly well. Fast forward 20 or 10 years, I'm going to share with you some insights that we're going to publish in the next couple of weeks from our global recruiting survey. We've been running this survey since 2014. We survey a couple of thousand recruiters around the world, and we collate that data. And this year, we're going to announce a bit of a milestone in terms of the data we've been collecting. We've been asking recruiters, what's your primary source for finding candidates who are ultimately hired? And this is the first year ever that social came out as number one. So even compared to 2018, or 2017, when about 33% of recruiters said social, which largely, when we dug into the data, is LinkedIn or Xing if you're in the DACH region, became the number one source of hire. So over 50% of recruiters will claim that social media is the number one source of hires they make, whether it's in an agency environment on behalf of their clients or directly. Does that feel accurate to you? Around half of hires come from LinkedIn, it could be a sourced LinkedIn candidate, it could be a job ad on one of these boards, it could be from Facebook, of course, but that's a much smaller percentage of that. This is what the data is suggesting to us. And this is consistent in pretty much every country where we carve up the data. It still comes out about 50%. So this is the first year. After 10 years of all of us using social media to try and hire and recruit, it finally became the dominant source. Job boards have taken a massive slide over that period of time, even year on year, this year compared to last. Last year, job boards made up about 30%. They're just over 20% now. So job boards took the biggest dent in that year in terms of source of hire. Direct hiring's gone up, so it's the only other trend that's gone up. The amount of candidates sourced either from your career site or directly from your database, which could be a talent pooling strategy in your CRM, or it could just be historical candidates. Even post-GDPR, it seems that this is an increasing source. People are going back to their talent databases to see who they have from previous applications, or they're relying more on their direct advertising strategy using their websites. Whole host of reasons could be driving this. Changes by organizations like Indeed to make it much more difficult for agencies, for example, to advertise for free, cleaning up the quality, improving or increasing the prices. Or maybe it's just down to the quality of or volume of candidates people are getting from those sources. And referrals, interesting, took a big slide as well. Referrals have been pretty consistent over the last 4 years, but seems to take a slide last year, again, being replaced by professional networks or social networks as a source of hire. So I wanted to start by giving you that kind of a flavor of what 2018 looks like from a social or digital recruiting perspective. Does it work? Does it not work? And it's come a long way in the last decade from a maybe it will work, when people would think you'll never make all your hires on social media. That's crazy. A bunch of people like myself, Boss, and others who 10 years ago were meeting in small groups, conferences that would never have had as many people as this, talking about could we use social, can this work, will it be the future? And most people in the industry laughing and saying that's crazy. That's not going to replace all the other ways we hire and recruit. So it's come full circle, I think, in the last decade. So that's just a snapshot of the overall data and the different sources in 2018 of where recruiters all over the world make their hires. So I'm not saying this is where they put most of their activity in, it's where they claim to make most of their hires. Again, their actual data from their databases might be different. So it's just what they claim as their top source of hire. So social's now the number one source of hire, but really, when we talk about social from a recruiting perspective, there's one big giant who are dominating the source of hire from social. This year we actually broke out professional hires from social. Every other year we said social including professional, and we had a number. This year we broke it out. And when we broke it out, it said 51% LinkedIn, 3% other social media as the source of hire. So when I say social, really, I mean LinkedIn. LinkedIn has become the dominant social player within our space. Some other stats around LinkedIn. We've been asking recruiters for 4 years what kind of LinkedIn account you have. And I wanted just to contrast 2014, when we first ran our survey, to the most recent data. Back in 2014, the number one LinkedIn account type of a recruiter was the basic or free account. You'll see there that nearly 50% of recruiters were using a free account. That has plummeted over the last 4 years. And you see that LinkedIn Recruiter is now the number one, whether it's Recruiter Professional Services or Recruiter Corporate, it's the number one type of account that a recruiter has. Can I just see a show of hands in the room? Who here uses a recruiter account? Okay, that's about half, just under half. Who still only uses a free account, a basic.com account? small group up in the corner, 1 or 2 dotted, right? So this room actually is a good representation of this data. We have, LinkedIn not only is the dominant player, they are the dominant holder of the budget when it comes to social recruiting as well. And huge investments in LinkedIn Recruiter, Recruiter Professional Services. Other ones like Recruiter Lite, around the same. So Recruiter Lite was called Talent Finder before it was called Recruiter Lite. So the data is still roughly the same. And premium versions of a .com account around the same, not much difference. So the big shift is the recruiter accounts replacing the free accounts over the last 4 years, which I think everyone here understands. So I asked the question, why? Why does nobody use free anymore? Can I ask you, why do you not use free anymore, those of you with the recruiter accounts? Why don't you use the free version to hire, to recruit? Pardon me?
They made it very easy to use site.
They've made Recruiter much easier, increased the functionality. It's a much better tool today than it was in 2014. Brand new filters, finding people by new opportunities, etc. All these things. Yeah, excellent. Any other reasons why people use a paid account, not a free account anymore? Limited search on a free account, yeah? And actually, most recently, has anyone using a .com account noticed the real new change to LinkedIn.com searching? Big group around the back. Is anyone aware of the massive big change recently with regard to searching on a free account? Pardon me? Projects for sure on Recruiter, but one of the deficiencies of LinkedIn.com, a very recent deficiency. There's a limitation, so there's a visible account. They've limited profiles you could view for a couple of years now. They have a kind of fair usage limit per month. But about 3 or 4 weeks ago, the week before their big Talent Connect conference in California, they introduced a brand new restriction, which makes it almost impossible to search on LinkedIn.com if you're using Boolean search, which you pretty much need to find a decent group of candidates. So we've been getting an influx of responses that suggest people can't use LinkedIn.com for search anymore, right? Unless you're searching for first name, surname, or you're searching for some really basic keywords. If you put a Boolean search in there, it's going to just break. It's going to come up error, error, error. And if you notice the small print, it says that they restrict the amount of search terms you can now use, which they never did before. That's a very, very recent phenomenon. So there's a lot of pull reasons, new functionality that's pulled people in, and some push reasons. You just can't use it very, very well, or so people think. So let me just share with you some of these things. And there's a restricted use of and. There's a restricted use of or now on the free account. And there's no restriction on the not, though. Now I'm going to share with you something here for those of you with free accounts, or colleagues with free accounts, that I please ask you not to post online. All right? I'm going to share with you a way that you can get around these restrictions. But if you post them online, they'll be removed. All right? And there'll be a change. I mean, it could be a change quite quickly anyway. But I want to show you how you can work around these for those of you who don't have the budget, but obviously still see the massive power of LinkedIn. So when you want to search now on a free account, you have an 8-word limit. So words are terms in the keyword search. You have a 7-word limit on the job title, 6-word limit on the companies, and 7-word limit on the schools, right? So those of you with recruiter accounts, you are sorted. And I myself have a recruiter account. I think the investment is absolutely worth it. I love all the different functionality, the filters, and all those different things, spotlights, projects, etc. But for those of you who don't have the luxury of the budget for that, I want to explain to you how you can work with these limits. So one of the things is that there is in the list of restrictions, I mentioned that there is a restriction to the amount of or terms or synonyms you can put into LinkedIn. But there's no restriction on the amount of not terms. So who here is pretty good at algebra? Anyone? Okay, we've got some brave people, 2 or 3 people who say they're pretty good at algebra, right? So when you know that the or terms are restricted, but the not terms are not restricted, you can use algebra to try and figure out a solution or a workaround for this. You put your mind to it, trial and error, you'll figure out the algebra. I'm going to share with you apart from the 2 people who said they're good at algebra, the rest of you, let me give you a help on this. And, by the way, is restricted, but rather than using and, you can just use spaces. So don't ever use the A and D. It's going to be restricted. Just use keywords beside each other, and it runs as an and. So if I'm doing a search for, we're slightly off on the left-hand side, you can see I'm opening my bracket on the left-hand side. If I'm doing a search for something like that, it's not going to work, right? Because I have too many terms when I run the search. So I run it in my title search here, for example. I put my keywords in as well. So let's run that in there and run the search. I get this: no results found. Try shortening or rephrasing your search. So I have used one term too many. That's a really simple search, right? But it won't work in a .com account anymore because it's one term too many. So how do we get a workaround? We can reduce the amount of terms, or we can use our algebraic expression, which is this. You can write the exact same term as a group of knots, which are not restricted, and I think it's going to work. So this is essentially algebraically the exact same thing, but just written using search terms that LinkedIn doesn't restrict. So you'll see that I'm putting not in front of my group of terms in my brackets, and then instead of ors, I put nots, and I put a not in front of the first term, which I wouldn't have had an or on. All right? So you got to look at that and get your head around what's going on there, right? But it's exactly the same search. And I'll show you what happens when we use that. So we put that into the title search, and we basically go and run this search. So let's go in there and click go. So I put that in there. I run the search and press apply. It failed the last time. Now it runs. I'm going to change my location to Ireland. Apply that. And you'll see that I get 247 results. Everyone see that? If I log into my LinkedIn Recruiter account, which is unrestricted, I get 247 results. So you can compare this like for like, and it works perfectly. LinkedIn.com only gives you a current title search, by the way. There's no option to switch between past or present anymore, but it works perfectly, and it doesn't seem to have a limitation. Well, as a limitation of a couple of hundred words, right? But you probably won't get to that limitation. That's the old limitation it used to have anyway. So this will work and will give you back that flexibility to use LinkedIn. That work okay? So feel free to share that with any colleagues or friends who have a free account, and you'll at least get back that functionality of being able to search. You don't get the other great stuff that Recruiter has. But as we go into 2019 and the next decade of social and digital search, it begs the question, how important is it to know that kind of stuff, right? That's a nice workaround for those of you with a .com account, and you've got to move on and fill roles today or fill roles tomorrow. But going forward in your career, in your team's career, in your colleague's career, how important is search and sourcing? So when we asked recruiters what their mix of inbound and outbound roles were, we got some interesting data, especially if we carve it up between the different types of recruiters. So we looked at all recruiters, which is the bottom, and we asked recruiters, are you working in-house, agency, or for an RPO? Hands up here who works in-house, recruits directly for an organization. Hands up who works for an agency, staffing agency. And what about an RPO, outsourced RPO provider? So no RPO providers in the room, so we're one or two. We've got staffing mainly and in-house. So interestingly, when you look at the data, agency recruiters are much more reliant on outbound sourcing and search than in-house. Kind of makes sense, right? I'm not sharing the data here on the screen, but there's further data in our survey that suggests that in-house recruiters get much more inbound applications to their jobs. Right? They're the direct hiring company. That makes sense. And sites like Indeed promote the direct employer over a third-party advertising a similar job, right? So this makes sense. They don't have that need. RPO, though, RPO typically are recruiters working for a massive organization on site with the company, or potentially in a back office sourcing center or search center. They also are more heavily weighted towards outbound. Inbound still slightly more reliant on, in-house recruiters slightly more reliant on inbound applications. But when we look at, again, trying to answer the question how important sourcing and searching is, we asked recruiters, what are you responsible for? And we listed all the tasks we could think of from start of the funnel, beginning of the process, right down to the end of the process. And you get a bit of a sense of what recruiters do generally and what they don't do generally. And this is a whole mix of recruiter types, 360-degree recruiters, sourcers, on-site HR business partners, recruitment business partners, a whole bunch of people. But you see that some parts of the process are handled by pretty much all recruiters, and lots of the parts of the process aren't done by recruiters. Now, I'll make this easier to look at, right? These are the things we do most. So these are the things that nearly all recruiters say that they do. Outbound candidate sourcing is the thing that, the number one most common thing recruiters will do in their job. Outbound candidate screening then is the second most, and you see intake meeting with the hiring manager, etc. So taking that funnel, looking at the things we do the most of, that's what recruiters do the most of. So for sure, sourcing is really important. It's what nearly every single recruiter has some responsibility for. Outbound sourcing, outbound search, and screening of those candidates. But when you look at the data of roles and job titles around the world, and this comes from some US data from the Labor Bureau of Statistics, when you break up roles as being manual or cognitive and then routine or non-routine, you see that non-routine roles and non-routine tasks have been in decline for 30 years in most of the modern world. So there is a movement away from routine tasks. And this is no different in recruiting. Now, the role of a recruiter is non-routine generally, but her job contains lots of routine parts, like organizing interviews, pain in the ass, rejecting candidates, double pain in the ass, right? And searching for the same bloody skill sets over and over again, not the most exciting thing to do in the world. Routine tasks are perfect for automation with the likes of machine learning and artificial intelligence. And you see AI, machine learning coming into play all the time. I'd be stunned if somebody doesn't, or many people don't present on machine learning and AI at this conference here today. Every single HR and recruiting conference has to mention it because it's bloody important. It is impacting our roles. But when you think about what an algorithm is, an algorithm, which is what underpins machine learning and AI, it's just a finite sequence of steps used to solve a problem. That's what algorithms are, and AI and machine learning are just really advanced, fast algorithms driven by better computing processing power. So complex algorithms are in code, but baking a cake is an algorithm. So is balancing a P&L, right? Profit and loss or balance sheet work. They're just steps you follow rigidly and you get to the same result. And when you think about recruiting and what we do, a lot of what we do is decision tree branching. It's very, very formulaic. It's very algorithmic. And when you look at the process and the funnel, algorithmic activities are perfect for outsourcing to machine learning and other things like that. So I look at the funnel again and look at what we do most of. I see that in these areas, there are tons of opportunities for automation. For the sourcing side, you've got lots of tools, as mentioned too, Pocket Recruiter, Hiring Solved, that can do the sourcing. Shortlist compilation, also done by those tools where they can stack rank the candidates better than a recruiter. Candidate rejection and feedback, there's a lot of AI tools like Olivia and Aria who are really good at that. Interview coordination built into a lot of CRM tools like Clinch, Smashfly. Doing the screening of candidates that apply. HireView's got a great algorithm. There's other tools like TalkPush, do that for high volume Facebook applicants as well. Job advertising as well, automated by things like Beamery and Clinch as well. So lots of the parts of the process that we are doing are already being outsourced and replaced with technology. Pretty much all our large customers are investing heavily in tools to remove that. So you look at the recruiter and see, what does she not do? And these are the things the average recruiter doesn't get around to doing that often, right? These are the less seldom done tasks by a recruiter, right? And you'll see a lot of them are further down the funnel. They're the type of things that we just don't have time to do, right? But a lot of them are bloody important. And if we're going to remove lots of things from the top, you're going to expect recruiters to start having opportunity and time to do the things at the bottom. We've done this. We deploy learning on scale to recruiters around the world. And we've moved from 2014 having a lot of training around social recruiting, digital recruiting, using LinkedIn, using Twitter, to these kind of categories. More about being a talent advisor, more about diversity and inclusion, how you drive a diverse workplace, recruiting in the tech space, recruiting in healthcare, recruiting in the engineering space. How do you engage talent? How do you basically have a better candidate experience? How do I really interview well and create a good interview experience? How do I manage my relationships? And next year, we're adding so much more around how do I basically work in an environment with machine learning? How do I use decision science tools like LinkedIn's new analytic tool? How do I use machine learning to influence hiring managers and clients? All of these are the skills that most recruiters are moving towards. Because in the world of 2018 into 2028, it isn't about, can I source on Twitter? Can I post an ad on LinkedIn? They aren't the skills of the next 10 years. Those are the skills that got us to where we are today. They got us to 51% of hires made from social sites. But that's not going to be what gets us to 2028. When you look at machine learning and AI and what it's doing in terms of the algorithmic processes of recruiting, you start seeing a massive shift towards what has been traditionally called the soft skills. I did a great presentation in New York with LinkedIn recently where they had a presenter get up and he talked about soft skills. And he said the phrase soft skills, in his opinion, was probably invented by a bunch of men in the 1950s to try and basically lessen the role of soft skills. The name sounds like it's lesser, but the soft skills are the human skills. They are the non-routine skills. They are the skills around influencing, around persuasion. They are the increasingly more important skills of the modern recruiter. So you look at the new roles, organizations are transforming their talent acquisition teams. We work with the recruiting team in IBM. They have 1,600 recruiters in the direct hiring organization of IBM around the world. And they have created brand new job titles like talent community manager, talent acquisition influencer, talent scientist. Completely different roles than what you've seen in traditional teams. They've remodeled their teams, delivering on strategies like Agile TA. Agile TA is a philosophy that IBM have implemented in different parts of their organization, where they can reduce the time to hire by 75%, right? By employing different types of people doing different things in a different way. And these are the modern skills of the new recruiter. Not can you use Facebook or LinkedIn, but can you do these kind of things? So you look at the technology innovation as well. We looked at how organizations are being innovative. And kind of quick summary of this data is when we looked at how different types of recruiters are adopting technology, we're not seeing a huge amount of innovation in-house. We're seeing innovation particularly in the RPO space. You look at the last three columns. RPO are much more likely to have implemented technology to remove bias, to have implemented new CRM technology, and to invest in AI to improve candidate and hiring manager experience. And still pretty good at actively looking for tech. RPO are particularly high volume, high scale recruiting, where the efficiencies come first. So we're going to look at what organizations are doing it best, or where your team might be in the future. Look to RPO, then look to staffing agencies, and probably look least to other in-house companies. And then you look at the type of attributes of organizations and their move. Again, RPO are leading the field in terms of using more talent analytics to influence hiring managers, being more accountable for diversity, using hiring manager surveys to make improvements to the process, and using better conversion metrics to assess rec performance. So I wanted to close by getting you to start thinking, not so much about what have the last 10 years been, right? It's been what it's been, it's got us to where we are, but more, what will the next 10 years look like? When somebody stands up here in 10 years and talks to you about the state of digital recruiting or just recruiting in the last decade, I want you to think, what kind of things are we going to be talking about? What are the skills that are going to be most important? To me, I think the shift is going to be from the things like candidate or sourcing, which is what we do today, more to candidate activation. Candidate activation being the candidates can be found, but how do we activate your brand in their mind? And they're the skills around influence, putting content online, building networks and engaging them. Rather than being a LinkedIn expert, that's not the skill that you'll use to win. It's, are you an expert in your sector? Can you speak to a candidate in that particular sector, in agronomics, in chemical engineering, and really know the industry inside out and speak to her as a peer? Are you an order taker today? Or are you going to be in the future an influencer, someone who drives and influences hiring managers, teams around how they're going to basically look at talent? Doing less of the repetitive work, more of the cognitive work, the stuff that's going to just scratch your brain. You're going to be paid to think and influence, and less do Boolean searches and manual searches online. And we're going to move away from asking ourselves as talent acquisition professionals and recruiters, did we fill the role, to did we solve the problem? Which is the bigger question. It's what the business really wants. Not did we get a hire in, great, bum on seat, move on. We filled the rec. Rather than what was the original problem? Is that solved? I did a talk a couple of weeks ago at LinkedIn Talent Connect on the move from talent acquisition to just pure talent. And it's definitely a wave of moving into a broader mindset around how we think about recruiting. So I want to leave you with that kind of thought around the kind of knowledge and skills you'll need to have. And I love reading my books, big Kindle fan, and these are just kind of 6 of the kind of areas of knowledge I think recruiters are going to be looking at going forward. I don't think we're going to be reading books about how to use Twitter and LinkedIn and Facebook. I think you'll be understanding how do you assess for talent. Great books like Daniel Coyle's The Talent Code. You'll be interested in how does online influence and persuasion works. What's the power of a color on a website and how does that influence someone's decisions? And Natalie Nahai's book, Webs of Influence, from a few years ago is awesome at that. And the Heath brothers wrote a book called The Power of Moments last year. It's got nothing to do with recruiting, but if you think candidate experience and read that book, you will start nailing candidate experience for your clients or organization. Dan Pink's written some brilliant books over the last few years around behavioral science. His last book, When, is brilliant when you think about engaging talent. When is the right time to do something rather than what should I be doing? Really great book. Nate Silver gives a great introduction to thinking statistically. So in a world where you get a stacked ranked search result from an AI tool that says that candidate's 97% and this candidate's 82%, what the fuck does that mean, right? How do you explain that to a hiring manager? Nate Silver's book is a brilliant introduction to that kind of statistical thinking. And Scott Page wrote a brilliant book 2 years ago on the diversity bonus, which is less around, oh, you have to hire people with different colored skin and different genders, and more, hang on a second, that correlates with this more important thing called cognitive diversity, which actually does drive more productivity in certain circumstances. And knowing that will enable you to really influence decisions around what kind of teams should we bring together in the organizations when we're thinking about hiring to really solve great business problems. So this is the kind of stuff that I want to leave you with to think about. These are the skills I hope you're looking to embrace, you're looking to learn more about. These are absolutely the skills of the future recruiter and the skills that we're hopefully going to be part of influencing over the next 10 years. Thanks for your time.